On his very first day as a teacher, the man walked into the school with quiet excitement. He had no idea the students had prepared a special welcome gift. The moment he opened the classroom door, a bucket of boiling water came crashing down from the ceiling. The entire class froze, waiting to see his reaction. But the man didn't flinch. He simply wiped the floor with calm precision, his face unreadable. What they didn't know was that this new teacher wasn't just any man. He was once a Special Forces operative in the United States Navy SEALs, trained in marksmanship, hand-to-hand combat, and survival. A man who had seen real battle. Now retired, he had chosen a quieter life, hoping to give back by becoming a teacher. But fate had other plans. Instead of a normal class, he was assigned to the most notorious group in the entire school, the one that had driven away 888 teachers before him. But in his eyes, they were just a bunch of kids, loud, reckless, but harmless. Early that morning, he walked into the classroom with a calm smile and a steaming cup of coffee. But what he saw left him speechless for a moment. Some students were gaming. Others were playing instruments, cooking, or even sleeping. No one cared that a new teacher had just walked in. He approached one sleeping boy, leaned close, and said softly, "Good morning." Then, turning to the board, he wrote his name in bold Chinese characters, Chinia. He barely started his introduction when laughter erupted behind him. The students mocked his handwriting, calling it chicken scratch. Just then his phone rang. He turned around and froze for a moment. Something in their smirks told him this was another prank. Without saying a word, Chinia picked up a rubber band and a piece of chalk from the podium. He squinted his eyes, took aim, and fired. Chalk pieces zipped across the room like bullets. In seconds, every prankster was hit. Water spilled, phones dropped, and the class erupted in chaos. When the dust settled, the once rebellious class stood drenched and silent. Chinia smirked and said, "Welcome to my class." The first round between the new teacher and his students ended with Chinia's total victory. But the students weren't ready to surrender just yet. They regrouped, plotting revenge against the man who had humiliated them all. The next day, Chinia returned, completely unfazed. Seeing the class distracted again, he decided to change tactics. He announced, "Anyone who can answer 3 of my questions correctly can leave class and play all day." The room lit up instantly. Now he had their attention. He called on one boy known for smoking. "You," he said with a grin, "give me one of your cigarettes." Then came the first question. What are the chemical components of a cigarette? Chinia calmly listed every component: nicotine, tar, carbon monoxide, breaking down the damage each one caused. Then Chinia nodded toward the door. "You passed." The stunned student hesitated, then ran out, cheering like he'd just won a war. The others looked at each other. Now everyone wanted a turn. One by one they came forward trying their luck. But each question turned into a lesson disguised as a challenge. By the end of the session, the class wasn't just answering questions, they were learning. They finally understood what cigarettes contained, and more importantly, how destructive they really were. And for the first time, they weren't bored. They were actually interested. But just as Chinia wrapped up, a man in a dark suit stepped into the doorway, a strict education bureau officer doing a surprise inspection. He watched the scene unfold, unimpressed. To him, this wasn't teaching, it was wasting time. With a cold sneer, he whispered to the principal, "If this keeps up, your school's test scores will plummet. And when they do, the school shuts down." The principal's face turned pale. But Chinia? He didn't even flinch. He believed something deeper. Education wasn't about memorizing facts or chasing grades. It was about curiosity, joy, and growth. He wanted his students to think, to question, to live with purpose. So after class, he did more than just teach, he cared. He spent his own money to help students struggling with poverty, ensuring they had food, books, and a fair chance to dream. And for those battling broken homes, like the quiet girl who couldn't speak to her father, he went beyond academics. He arranged playful racing games between fathers and daughters, helping them reconnect without words. Slowly, the students began to trust him. But peace never lasts long. One day, news spread that a student from Chinia's class had been cornered by a local gang. The boy was being forced to drink something laced with drugs. Without hesitation, Chinia showed up, calm but deadly serious. He walked into a grimy alley filled with thugs, looked around, and said politely, "Gentlemen, sorry to interrupt. I'm looking for my student." The gangsters froze, then burst into laughter. Across from him stood a burly man built like a UFC champion. He stepped forward and sneered, "You lost, old man?" Chinia didn't answer. He just smiled faintly, scanning the crowd. Then he saw him, his student, trembling, trapped inside a storage cabinet. "Liang," he said gently, "come on out." But before the boy could move, one of the thugs shoved Chinia back. The next few seconds were chaos, swift, brutal, and precise. Each thug lunged, only to be dropped instantly by Chinia's calm, flawless strikes. The room echoed with the sound of punches, kicks, and disbelief. By the time it was over, the once feared gang lay groaning on the floor. The student stepped out, wide-eyed, unable to believe what he'd just witnessed. Chinya brushed off his jacket, turned to the last man standing, and said with a grin, "Come on then, anyone else?" Even the boxing champion, the toughest of them all, couldn't take it anymore. He ripped off his shirt and charged. But against a man who had survived real battlefields, he didn't stand a chance. Chinya dodged, countered, and finished the fight with one clean strike. When it was over, the entire gang was sprawled out cold, the air heavy with silence. The student ran to him, still shaking. And at that moment he realized, this wasn't just a teacher. He was a protector. News of the fight spread fast. Within days, Chinya's brave act made headlines across local TV stations. For the first time, the students realized the man who calmly taught chemistry and life lessons was a former Special Forces soldier, a hero in disguise. But what shocked them even more was what came next. They discovered that long before he became a teacher, he used to be one of them, a student of that same chaotic class, only far more rebellious. Back then, Chinya wasn't a disciplined soldier. He was the school's biggest troublemaker. He had even broken the nose off the principal's statue and ruined an entire graduation ceremony. That day, while a boy played the piano on stage, young Chinya was busy pulling pranks backstage. But his prank went too far. When the principal tried to stop him, Chinya lost control, picked up a broom, and swung it wildly. The boy at the piano ran after him in anger. Chinya turned, blocked the broom, and with one swift kick, snap, it broke in half. The fight escalated. A statue nearby began to wobble, and before anyone could react, it fell right onto the boy's hand. The music stopped. The hall fell silent. That boy's hand was shattered. He could never play the piano again. From that moment, guilt followed Chinya everywhere. He was expelled from school, but instead of cutting him off, the principal did something unexpected. He wrote Chinya a letter of recommendation to a military academy in the United States. "Use your strength," the letter said, "to protect, not destroy." Those words changed everything. Chinya trained, fought, and became one of the most elite soldiers in the Navy SEALs. But after years of battle, he realized something: war never truly ends. No matter how many enemies you defeat, you can't shoot your way to peace. He had seen lives torn apart, families broken, cities turned to dust. And somewhere deep inside, that guilt from his school days still lingered. So one day, he made a choice. He put down his gun and picked up a pen. He traveled the world, searching for meaning, for redemption, for a way to heal what was broken inside. Until one afternoon, a letter arrived, a postcard from his old principal. It said simply, "Come home. The next generation needs you." That's when he returned, to teach, to guide, and maybe to make peace with his past. After the students learned his story, everything changed. The once mocking laughter turned into quiet respect. When he walked into class the next morning, everyone stood. "Good morning," they greeted in unison. He smiled, replying with warmth, "Good morning." That day, when he entered the classroom, something unexpected was waiting for him. On his desk sat a shiny red apple. He raised an eyebrow, smiled slightly, and asked, "Who gave me this?" Just then, the door opened, and the beautiful teacher from the next class appeared, smiling shyly. The students whistled and cheered as Chinya took a bite, pretending not to blush. From that day forward, the atmosphere in his class completely changed. The students who once mocked and rebelled were now eager to learn. They came early, sat up straight, and actually listened. The laughter in the room wasn't from mischief anymore. It was joy. For the first time, they believed in themselves. Chinya's lessons went beyond textbooks. He taught them about courage, compassion, and life itself. But destiny had one more cruel twist in store. On the day of the final exam, the day that would decide everything, a gang stormed the school grounds. They were led by a new boss. Rough, dangerous, and fueled by revenge. Within minutes, they locked the students inside the classroom, barricading every exit. Chinya stepped into the hallway, his calm eyes meeting chaos. The thugs charged. He met them head-on. Every strike, every movement was precise, like a dance between discipline and fury. He fought with the same purpose he once carried on the battlefield, not to destroy, but to protect. For every punch thrown his way, he countered with twice the force. But then, everything stopped. A slow clap echoed through the corridor. The gang leader had arrived. Tall, cold, and filled with rage, he stepped forward. Chinya pointed straight at him. "Why are you doing this?" The man didn't answer. He simply raised his left hand, revealing a scar. And that's when it hit him. This wasn't just any gangster. It was the boy from years ago, the piano player whose hand was crushed during graduation. He had come for revenge. The two circled each other, the air thick with emotion, anger, guilt, and pain from the past colliding in one final battle. The gang leader struck first, fast and brutal. But Chinia defended, not with hate, but with regret in his eyes. He didn't want to hurt the boy again. But he had no choice, he needed to stop him. Punch after punch, they clashed, 2 lives bound by one tragic mistake. Finally, Chinia disarmed him, turning the tables. He grabbed the knife, flipped it in his hand, and everyone froze, expecting him to strike. But instead he drove the blade into his own thigh. Chinia looked the young man in the eye and said softly, "This is the debt for your left hand." The students ran out from the exam hall, crying his name. He looked at them one last time and smiled. Weeks later, the results came out. For the first time in years, every single student in his class passed. They held their certificates proudly, knowing it wasn't just grades, they'd been changed. Outside, the students gathered, chanting his name, holding banners that said "Thank you, teacher." Tears welled up in his eyes as he waved back. At that moment, all the pain, all the guilt, finally found peace.